I wanted to share something I came across in the writings of Saint Padre Pio. In this book is Letters, volume number 3. They're translated from his letters, and it is his some of his letters to what he called his spiritual daughters, people he would offer some spiritual direction to. And whenever I'm feeling like I'm having a particular issue in the spiritual world, I do this thing called, I guess some people call it Bible roulette, where they just like flip open to a page of the Bible and ask the Holy Spirit to show them, what needs to be read. I kind of do the same thing with Padre Pio's letters, and it's so always relevant. He I really appreciate the spiritual direction he gives me from heaven through his letters. So today I was feeling a little discouraged about some bad habits I'm trying to overcome. And literally, I turned to page 739, and the caption at the top is San Giovanni Rotondo, 11 June 1918, Fighting Bad Habits in One's Inclinations, the three parts of charity. A, love for God, B, affection for ourselves, and C, love of our neighbor. He recommends himself to her prayers. And so this is what he said. So evidently, she had written a letter to him about trying to overcome a particular problem. And so this was his response. May Jesus continue to totally possess your heart. I have your letter, which I received a short time ago, in which you describe your imperfection and suffering with great sincerity. And I would like to correspond well to your desire to obtain some remedy from me with which to extirpate those imperfections from your heart. But having carefully considered everything, my dearest daughter, the majority of what you tell me needs no other remedy except the passage of time in the practice of the rule by which you live, and which has been assigned and will be assigned to you by him who takes the place of God. And I think it's probably a religious sister, a nun that he's talking to. There are some physical infirmities whose cure depends on a good way of life. Self love, self esteem, false freedom of spirit are all roots which cannot easily be extirpated from the human heart. Only the production of their fruits, which are sins, can be impeded. Because their first buds, that is, their first movements, cannot be impeded at all while we are still in this mortal life, though their quality and strength can be moderated and diminished through the practice of the opposing virtues, particularly that of love of God. Therefore, we must be patient when getting rid of bad habits. And that was not a line that I appreciated this morning. Dominating aversions and overcoming our own inclinations and humors when necessary. Because, my daughter, this life is a continual struggle, and nobody can say, I am not assailed. Calm is reserved for heaven, where the palm of victory awaits us. On earth, we must always fight amidst hope and fear, on condition, however, that hope is always stronger, always keeping in mind the omnipotence of Him who comes to our aid. Therefore, do not tire of constantly working with trust and resignation for your improvement and perfection. Know, my daughter, that charity is made up of three things: love for God, affection for ourselves, and love for our neighbor. And may my poor instructions put you on the path to practice this. A. Throughout the day, often place your heart, thoughts, and soul in God with great confidence, and say to Him with the royal prophet, I am thine, save me. I do not spend too much time dwelling, I'm sorry, do not spend too much time dwelling on the type of prayer God grants you, but simply and humbly follow His grace in the affection you must have for yourself. B. Keep your eyes well opened for bad inclinations, without tiring yourself excessively in order to uproot them. Do not let the sight of your misery and bad humors frighten you. Think of your heart with a great desire to perfect it. Have an untiring desire to set it straight in a sweet and charitable manner when it stumbles. Above all, work as hard as you can to strengthen the upper part of the soul, without dwelling on feelings and consolations, but rather on resolutions, propositions, and aspirations which faith, guidance, and reason inspire in you. O my daughter, do not be tender with yourself. Tender mothers ruin their children. Do not complain and cry easily. Do not be surprised at this Im- importunity and violence which you notice with great suffering. No, my daughter, don't be surprised. God permits it in order to render you humble with a true humility, abject and vile in your eyes, in which you must seek nothing except God, diverting the spirit from the creature to the Creator, and with continual affection for most holy humility and simplicity of heart. Treat your neighbor well and don't get angry. When necessary, say these words of the Divine Master: I love my neighbors, O Eternal Father, because you love them. And you gave them to me as brothers, and you want me to love them as you do. In a particular way, love children, your disciples, to whom the very hand of divine providence accompanied you and united you with a heavenly binding. And don't be surprised at those little attacks of impatience, because there is no guilt in this except when preceded by reflex will, that is, being aware of it without doing your best to calm yourself. Bear those poor children, caress them also, keep them in your very own heart, my dearest daughter, as I keep you in mine. Having an extremely great and most particular desire for your spiritual perfection, God Himself having obliged me to do this. Thank you for what you do for me. Don't abandon your incessant prayer for me, knowing that I do a great deal more for you. Know, my daughter, that I am stretched out on the bed of my sufferings. I have ascended to the altar of the Holocaust, waiting for the fire to descend from on high in order to quickly consume the victim. Make haste with your insistent prayers, so that the devouring fire may soon descend. Remember that I am extremely sad, and that no ray of light comes to brighten the darkness of this night in which I am immersed. The thought of not receiving even one single word of comfort from a daughter whom I love so tenderly is extremely harsh and bitter beyond measure. I bless you with the usual affection, Padre Pio. I don't know who this was to. So maybe it wasn't a religious sister because he's talking about her having children, but maybe she's a religious sister in charge of an orphanage or something like that. Um, but I guess it just, it's usually, Marina Gargani. And so at the beginning, it gives, like kinds of a little description of each one of them. Anyway, I won't read that, but you get the point. I thought it was some good advice on how to gracefully overcome bad habits. I know my inclination is always to get frustrated. I don't know that I fall into despair so much anymore, but definitely frustration, impatience with myself. And I think that's the most important thing to remember. We have to be patient with ourselves, and some things, we just try the best we can, and we ask God to make up for the rest and to purge us of bad habits that lead to sin. So that's all. Just thought I'd go over that here on my little lunch break as I sit in front of my computer day in and day out. Anyway, have a good day. Joan of Arc Media out.